There we go. That was weird.
No, it's all good.
Uh,
So I have my Twitch going.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect.
All right, let's do some. I'll go damage. All right, so I think since we're streaming, we can kind of like go with the premise of basically of like how me and you design creatures
Uh,
for today.
yeah, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me.
So you had helped me design a few creatures a few times, but like I guess let's talk about whenever you did the damage specific like sort of like horror creatures. Like
Oh yeah, what I've been calling the damage series.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So just my premise for those creatures was basically just try to find the best way to, in not game breaking terms, but difficult terms, to embody the idea of the damage that they were representing. So like for instance with the one that I call the frozen, which is the like embodiment of the cold damage, I had to come up with a feature that would feel like your character was being frozen to death.
yeah,
Which came in the way of something called frostbite, which was like, the person like losing strength and losing movement and that sort of thing, and then eventually becoming petrified if you it goes on for too long. But that's sort of the idea for them.
yeah. And so like how would you say you go about like as balancing them compared to other creatures? Like, because me
uh,
personally, I sort of like what I usually do is I'm like, okay, so challenge rating is super vague. Like a lot of people haven't got to experience like how to balance things according to um, more action economy, and I think that is a huge problem for a lot of new players. Is having to figure out like having like say like 5 players and then like it says like challenge rating 5, but they're level 5 and then oh it wasn't challenging at all. And
oh,
like I
yeah.
think obviously there is some art to that.
Yeah, I think for myself, and especially when I'm designing encounters, I try not to look at the challenge rating as much, but
Me
look
too,
at
yeah.
more of how much damage is this creature going to be doing on its turn to a certain player. Um, is it going to be inflicting any debuffs that might, impair more than just that player?
Yeah.
It's sort of more of not looking at just the CR and saying, "Oh, this is a CR that," and like putting it in encounter mode and saying, "Oh, this encounter is supposed to be deadly," because sometimes it'll turn out that it's super deadly, or sometimes it turns out it's not deadly at all.
Yeah, not even close. And I think
Yeah,
that's kind
it's
of the trick to it. Is like it's weird that like not bashing on like D&D for like their design, but like challenge rating has never really been something to really rely on, I guess, especially with designing like uh, character encounters, especially like something like 1 versus 7, and I think a lot of it is like say like you got like a fighter who can do like multiple attacks a turn.
Axel turn.
So that is an action economy or like and things like that. So like I think a lot of it is how much damage can the thing do before it just gets like pile drived by like a bunch of people, and like how
Right.
well can it resist? Um, how much does it matter like to be stunned or whatever? So like, and obviously you're not just like, oh, let me just give it every feature possible to keep up, but like an example being I designed a while back, and this was for a high level campaign, like level 15, and everyone will tell you, oh, high level campaigns, no one will die. There's no possibility of dying, and
Fine.
like it's impossible to challenge, and it's not true. Like I made and I used a lot of times it's really useful to use existing creatures as a basis. So I used the Kraken as just kind of like, oh, this is what I'm going to start with. and I took out its electricity generation, and I took out its messed with its tentacles basically. And
Oh.
so basically what I did is on grapple, it'll swallow a creature. It can hold up to 3 creatures. And when it does, it's able to swallow one of their spells. So it's obviously focused on spellcasters, but it's or like an innate ability can do those kind of things too. But essentially, like if say the person had Fireball, it can take any spell slot of the spellcaster and cast it once. And whenever it's inside, the creature's inside the, I called it the Blood Kraken, because it was stuck in the River of Styx. And basically, the swallowed creature must make a Constitution saving throw. I think the DC was 17, because obviously this was higher level.
Right.
They basically would lose a spell slot, and the Blood Kraken can choose what level it can cast it at and what spell it can take. Yes, that's really powerful. But like, instead of having electric generation that hits several people, it's focusing on like taking a spell, and it challenged the party to a pretty good amount because they were more worried about like what it has that next turn, you know.
Right. Looking at their own spell list and seeing what could it take from me.
Yeah. And while you're in there, you're obviously still trying to
Get out.
get out of it, you know, because you're taking the crushing damage and the
Acid damage.
acid damage and all that. So like, it was a really cool encounter, and it's okay to take like, oh, I'm gonna take from this existing creature that's really popular. There's nothing wrong with that, you know.
Yeah.
To see the balance, but like obviously each party's different, you know. And one big thing too, and this is a little out of relation to the topic of today, but like as a DM, whatever you give your players, that is entirely your fault.
Yes.
So like, if
my
you
goodness, yes.
yes, and so like, and you're like, well, they have this item and it's overpowered. It's like, okay, then why'd
Like,
you
well,
give it to them?
Give it to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that out with Kishkaman when I was in our campaign that's coming up this month. When he was like, oh, I'm just going to cast these healing spells from the Staff of Healing that I bought at the store that you put in the world. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, and every DM is guilty of that, you know? Like, when I
yeah.
first started DMing, like, it was like 15 years ago, I give them this sword, and it was specifically for paladins, and it did all this crazy stuff, and I didn't even think about it. And then it, like, completely, like, I wouldn't say it ruined the game, but it made it so much harder for me to challenge them, because I gave it to them, and it was like, well, that was my fault, you know, and like, and that's okay, and like, you just kind of have to like learn to bounce back from that.
Right. Then it becomes more of like, okay, they have this item. What am I going to do to challenge them now that they have this pretty good item that I gave them?
Yeah, and sometimes it's okay to like be like, hey guys, I kind of messed up on giving you that, but not necessarily take it away, but like let them know that.
It might be not taking it away. It could be like modifying it or something like that, or
Right.
it could be just being like telling them that you made a mistake.
Yeah, and also too, like, you know, let them know that you're gonna be trying to figure out how to counter that, and things may or may not be perfect, but you know,
Yeah.
DMs are not perfect, and like I think everyone knows, and like until you become a DM, like it's so much so much work, and so
Yes.
designing creatures can go up or down. It could be like, man, I really did not do well on designing that, or like, or maybe you did, you made them too powerful, but like, it's kind of like, it's always like a test run.
Yes.
So, and getting a feel to what your players do, because like, say you have a barbarian, but Yasha is a good example from Critical Role of a barbarian who's not like my barbarian Lihon, in the same respect. They are the same class, but or a better example, my trickster cleric in your campaign is far different than Alistair.
And
is far
produces
different than
Jester.
Jester.
Yeah.
Like in the same class, uh, probably the same, close to the same stats, and but they play completely different. Alistair is actually a melee character.
Right.
His main thing is inflict wounds, which she uses a lot, but he gets right in their face and uses blur, and then uses that.
Like blur plus like the mirror image and stuff like that. I think especially for DMs, it's all about when it comes to building monsters. It's all about knowing your party. Uh, you have to be able to know what your party typically will do, which is why I think like you have to know what your party is going to typically do in battle. Is your fighter a ranged fighter? Are they melee fighters? Do you have a lot of wizards and stuff like that? It's there's a lot of things to take into account, but it just comes with playing for a little bit, which is in my opinion why you should not start out with homebrew monsters. Get to know your party a bit before you start going. Oh, let's throw these cool things I've made or ideas I have at them.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it's okay to branch out and try things that are new, but also it's kind of like, not. I would say when people are like, oh, well, the rules are just guidelines. 100%, 100%. But the thing is it becomes, are you gonna let them guide you, or are you just gonna ignore them? And so like, to have that like experienced, game-tested creature as something that that you can like use to kind of mess with your to really like help balance what you've made. So like, if you're not sure about making this giant like Fey Baylor, like you want to make some crazy thing, like I would say like wait on it, and not necessarily say don't tell yourself not to do it, but like play with stuff.
Right.
You know, like
learn like maybe like make little tweaks to regular monsters that are already in the DMs or in like the monster manual or stuff like that, and
yeah.
then start fully creating things from scratch. That's what I had to do with a couple of the monsters that you guys faced, where it just slightly reskin things for the monster manual and like the other monster books to get a feel for how you guys fight, what you do in order to figure out how best to make custom monsters for you.
Yeah, even if it's like we'll take a goblin, super basic creature, right? And just like take a goblin and give it like spells, right? Obviously, it's just making like an NPC in a way. That's one way to do it. Just take the stats of what the goblin is typically in the monster manual, or say he is corrupted and he is like has like undeath, right? And so you'll take things from maybe like a mummy. It's a goblin mummy, right? Just take like it doesn't have to be a full-fledged like CR3 mummy necessarily, but like it could be like, okay, he's got the disease touch.
Yeah. That's like I said, that's a good place to start out in like a lieu of home brewing in a sense. It's tweaking first, then full on creating. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, because otherwise you're gonna be like, oh man, I messed with something I probably shouldn't have, you know, and that becomes like kind of I wouldn't say dangerous territory, but like definitely something you gotta watch for, because like this is like that's how like I'm not one to pull punches in games. I won't like fudge rolls because I feel like everyone knows like how crazy like fitting sometimes the dice are, right? And like and at the same time like I don't like the idea that like okay I have a demon in the game, and which actually comes to a next point. If you're using a beholder and you're not using all of its stat block, you're not using its full challenge rating. And that's a big thing. And I think, I'm not saying like, oh, kick your players' asses, and like, not make it fair. I'm saying that if you're using a character or a monster, I should say, and it has all these abilities, and you're holding them back because you don't want to kill them as a DM. You're not using that monster as its full capabilities, and it will not be an accurate difficulty.
Yeah, I think especially one thing that I always try to do, and there are some guides for these online that I found, is just play the monster like the monster would play itself.
Yep.
Don't try to, you have to, if you're gonna play a werewolf, the werewolf is gonna go after the weakest person because that's what they do. They're just gonna take out one and then go to the next one,
Right.
And I found there are, I can't remember what the name of the website is. I'll have to maybe say it and find it in the next one. But there's a website that does like breakdowns on like the behaviors of different D&D monsters, which I found really useful for just being like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
okay, so this is how these guys would probably act if they got into a fight.
Or even like uh, one thing too that's really helpful too with like monsters in relation to others is like say a giant has a club, right? And the club does 3d10. I don't remember the exact damage of a giant's club, but like say that's what it was, 3d10, and you had another monster that was a giant treant that you made that was the same size and about the same strength as a giant using the same size club. You can take that and go, oh, that's an accurate example of what a creature that size using a club that size, the damage that it would do. And it's again just like using something that is existing already to transfer over to another one, and
Exactly.
tiny little cheat codes, in a way of just like, oh well, let me just change the thing real quick. I want to
Oh,
do
you're good.
tanks. It'll get us in quicker. Um,
Quicker, yeah.
um, like for example, it'll probably, it's not a huge deal if people know about it because they don't know when it's coming. But I made Wrecking Ball with you
Yes.
as a creature, and we use inspiration from an outside game to put it into D&D, and like we we took the Gearkeeper construct from Matt Mercer's Guide to Wildmount and just sort of messed with it. And we took out a couple things and added some more. And we were like, okay, well, what does he need to do? He needs to be able to like, fly around and terrorize people. Um,
Right. Because I
and,
think like the gear construct already had like the movement speed, a good movement speed for Wrecking Ball, but it didn't have like the ability to like sling around places, which is something we had to add.
yeah,
And then the other, like, it had like a spear, like a ramming, or not like ramming, had like a spear attack that it could just like a melee attack that Wrecking Ball doesn't really have melee stuff. I mean,
he can. I mean, you can
besides,
slap
like,
him with your gun, but
besides-
like,
right, right. Yeah, I
it
know.
doesn't really do
His
a whole
melee
lot.
ability is more of like his body than an actual like spear that protrudes out of the body.
Yeah, and so we just, and again, and I say this for like, PCs all the time. Flavor. Do not commit to some crazy ass homebrew if you don't know how it's gonna go. Like,
Yes.
take an existing class that you're going to have to describe with words in order to like tell them what you do anyway, and just sort of like make it your own. So like Lehan, my barbarian, there is no totem of the lion, but instead of a bear, it's a lion.
Yeah.
And like I didn't change anything. It's just like,
It's just it's just flavor, just reflavored in a sense.
yeah. And I think that's really where you get a lot of like crazy stuff and like cool stuff is like when you take something that's already there, you're not changing mechanics and you're not changing anything of importance, you're just making the appearance what you want.
Right. And I think like another good thing on monster building and testing is if you're a DM and you have, let's say, like I know because we do our campaigns on D&D Beyond. If you happen to have that, or even if you just have like copies of your characters, your players' character sheets, use those to do like mock combats.
Oh
That
yeah,
is something that
100%.
I've found that really helps just to know like, okay, is this going to
How would it go?
absolutely murder them? yeah, like, is this going to absolutely murder them, or is this going to be something that they're going to cakewalk? Or is it like an
Yeah.
audible challenge that can go 50-50 either way?
I did that with your guys' encounter with the Aeorian Reverser.
Yeah, I'm so
And
sad I wasn't there for that.
and oh man, I forgot about that. And like
Yeah, I know. I
basically,
hate it so much.
essentially like when you guys fought it like on even ground, you guys murdered it. But like, and that was, you guys were like not even, I think it was like level 5. And you guys didn't like have like crazy magic items or anything. Or any like weird homebrew classes. And you destroyed it. But all I did, the only thing that I did was I added water. Like, I had it made the creature in a flooded room. And it
That's
entirely
another,
changed it.
yeah, that's another thing is that a lot of DMs they when it comes to encounters and features, they just put in just like a base area, just the normal plain area, and I think that works sometimes. But if you're wanting to look, well, if you're looking to like spice up your encounters and things like that, add extra different terrain things that happen in the terrain, or a terrain that favors the monster.
Or even like messes with it, you know, like that creature like that I put in, it wasn't like he was like, oh yeah, he's great in water. He just the creature itself didn't need, I believe that like they are just like they don't need to eat, they don't need to sleep, so like they're not like a creature that needs to like survive on the typical means. I think he still needed to breathe though, and like oh man.
That's not good.
Yeah. Remember that one game where the dude straight up like ulted us like 6 times? That was hilarious.
Well, it was the two of them, both like the Hanzo and the Wrecking Ball were always ulting at the same time.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
Full disclaimer on this game: we're not claiming to be pros on Overwatch.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not saying we're good. So if anyone's like, "You guys suck," yeah, we probably do.
Yeah,
but like, but I mean, like, we're
something we find fun.
yeah, it's fun to play while we talk. We have a lot of really good conversations, and that's where this idea came up. It was like, why don't we just like talk about D&D while we play a game?
Hey,
And oh, I'm surprised. But like with creatures, like one really cool thing too is like taking. We touched on a little bit ago about taking inspiration from things you love. If you like Supernatural, if you like Futurama, if you want to like make freaking Bender, you know, to make a creature, but like, or you know whatever it is you want to do. All you have to do is look at go through the monster manual. That's why I was saying, like, when people say rules are just guidelines and then they don't read the book, go like read the monster manual. Like, go through Mordecai's Tome of Foes and just read it, and like not for the rules and not to stick to it to the degree, but you would be amazed at like a creature that you've not heard of before, because I didn't hear of some of them, and I was like, what is this? This is a weird creature, you know? and maybe it doesn't fit what you want, but like it's like, oh, I'm gonna change that a little bit, you know?
Exactly, and I think that's one of the biggest things when I was making the damage series. What I did was just literally because I went to this online website that we could like look up like the bestiary from all the different books.
Oh,
and cool. I put in like it's 5e tools for anyone who wants to use it. But it put in like a search for like creatures that do this damage type, and then I was just looking through each of those creatures to see like what those abilities were, what they kind of did, and then it was okay, this is what creatures who have these damage abilities do. Now how do I tweak that to make it feel more like that damage?
Yeah. And like it was almost, I wouldn't even say that they were like elementals, even when they went into the whole fire thing. That's again like you can break the molds, you know.
Oh, yeah. Do not be afraid to the monster triad, things that have elemental damage have to be elementals. Things that aren't seemingly alive have to be undead or constructs.
Yeah, I mean, you could even like, oh, it's a plant matter, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, that's why, like, I think a lot of times you'll see like people say, like, I've heard it from a lot of like old school players, but I also will see it from new players who are afraid to do certain stuff. Where they're like, oh, well, you can't do that with undead, or you can't do that with Fae or whatever. And it's like, sure you can. Like, obviously, like balance reasons, like pay attention. Like
Right.
balance, I think balance is one of those things where it's less. I mean, there is obviously very much like numbers to it, but there's also like a matter of feeling it out. It's like, does this feel like if you were playing it, does this feel balanced?
Yep. And
Man.
I think, especially speaking speaking of balance, so for Fate, who
Oh
is my
man,
like big
that
bad evil guy
conversation.
of yeah, Fate is my like big bad evil guy of the campaign I'm running right now, and I know that these guys they aren't gonna like see this in-game fight for a while, but I was like, okay, well I'll go ahead and stat him up for what I think he should be, and then I'll ask some people in the community to see what they think, you know, to give me some tweaks. And yeah, there's some really difficult things with Fate. Like he has an ability called Fate Shift that at first was meant to like switch just like anything about their character, from race to background to class. And the biggest, most overwhelming response I got from the community was that the ability to switch classes is busted and it's gonna break the game. And you shouldn't be doing stuff like this. It's like, oh, okay. I listened to it somewhat. I was like, okay, I do understand how if your class would switch, then it's gonna be really difficult. It's gonna take a lot of time in game for them to, you know, switch things out and things like that. So then it was like, okay, well, we'll change it up so it's not that. And then some people were like, well, why don't you add some beneficial effects too if this is actually changing their fate? I was like, oh, that's actually a really cool idea that I didn't know about. So it's just sort of like, if you have to feel out, especially with big monsters, how it's going to work. And yes, if you were going to put this out into the public as like asking people for help, be prepared to get some pretty harsh responses. But
Yeah, and it's up to you to listen to it or not, and like it depends. Like you have to know what you're going for. Like
exactly.
like if you know like what you're going for, then don't change it. Like I'm not saying like be stubborn and like don't take into like account like interesting like tweaks, because like there was one time I posted something and I didn't really think about the exhaustion points, like how it applied. And it was applying to like every attack, and I was like, they're like, you know, you're gonna kill him in like a matter of moments, right? And I was like, oh, I forgot about that mechanic. You know, like, and that was my fault, and like it's just something that like I overlooked. And sometimes when you get into that like you know, designer mode, you kind of like get tunnel vision.
Yeah, it's sort of like, oh, this looks really cool, and you know,
I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's okay at sometimes, but even if people are being critical about what you're doing, don't always like take it to heart. But I've always found that there's a little bit nuggets of truth in whatever people are saying, whether it be the nicest way of putting it or not.
Yeah, and sometimes some people, okay, and I mean this kindly to some folks, because like I'm not saying people are dumb, but like when people are like when they're like rogues are overpowered or like druids are overpowered, no they're not. Like the reason why certain classes are really good is because they're really good at what they do. If a core class is throwing you off, you gotta change your toolkit. It's as simple as that. Like artificers, like Vault, he's really good at what he does. And then instead of me going like, well, like he, or you know what? Let's be honest. Vault and his the player rolling always high, and then Tim always rolling low. Like our friend Tim, we love him, and Tim, if you're listening, we love you. But like
Amazing.
his characters could have a plus 12 and whatever like expertise they got, the man won't roll above a 2.
Somehow it's like, oh, it's a 4. Okay, that's a 6. Okay,
It's
and then
like,
his
wait a minute.
brother, who's
Yeah,
the
his
guy
brother's
playing
like
gold,
15
it's like
is the lowest he'll roll.
15. It's like, oh, I got a 22. There's a 19, and it's like,
Yeah, what's your
going
bonus
on
to
here?
that? Plus 1? You know.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Ugh.
And so like there's that's like an example of things to look to kind of like think about. As far as like things that are a consistency. So or you know what? Like I'll be honest, sometimes I'll think I'll know what a player's gonna do. I thought with fighting that the devil that was like hunting down that gnome that you guys were like
Oh
with.
yeah.
I thought
The
you
one that
guys were
kept
just
disappearing
going.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought you guys were just going to try to run and try to like avoid the thing, and like and you guys would just be fine with having kind of like a meh person in your party.
Yeah.
But
Oh, we got a
didn't
shit up
work
just
out.
went now.
We're gonna eat his face. Like,
Yeah.
and so like the demon, or not the demon. I'm sorry, that's one of my own pet peeves. With like calling devils demons. The devil is a creature who was powerful. It was a creature from Mordecai's Tome of Foes. I forget what it was called, but it was a hunter demon, so or a hunter devil. So it was supposed to be hunting down this gnome, and like it's an evil character. He will not hesitate to kill something, but he has a reason as to why he's there. And so you can bargain. That being said, if he has no reason to stay, he's not going to stay. Not every creature has to stay to its death.
Yes.
that is the thing that a lot of people are like, I'm just going to have him stand there
Yeah,
and like
I think there's
take the hits.
right. I think there's that's a goes along with the thing of just like being in the creature's mindset. Like if you have like a pack of dire wolves that are besetting your players and they're getting their butts kicked, they're not gonna stick. Like a normal wolf is not gonna stick around if its prey is beating its ass.
Yeah, and
it's just
or
gonna be like, oh, this is too much.
alternatively, like fiends. Fiends don't die when you bring them down to 0 hit points and kill them on the prime material plane. They don't care if you kill them. It's a setback. They're gonna if they really don't like you, they're gonna come back in a month and kill you or try to, and like or they can like suicide rush over to whatever they need, grab it, die, and like maybe they need to destroy the item. They did it. Mission accomplished.
Even though they died, they still come back. As long as they're on. I mean, their tactics change a bit once they're on in the hells, but sending your players to the hells. Oh jeez, help them.
Oh yeah, I've done it. And again, get into the mindset of your creatures. Like if you're gonna put a creature in that's evil, don't hold back for your friends. I'm sorry, and I mean this in a place of love for my friends, but it makes the players who have put so much work into their characters to be who they are and to be powerful or to be convincing, and then you take that away by like basically saying, you know what, I don't think you can handle this. It's different. Like, and people are like, well, what if I made the encounter bad? The point of what we're saying too is to say like don't rush stuff. Put some work into what you're doing, and so that way you're not like just throwing stuff at them that you didn't design.
Yes.
Or you didn't design well. And like I'm not saying like don't make mistakes. Don't expect mistakes. I'm saying don't be reckless with your mistakes. It's kind of like
Don't just throw a creature together and then just decide to throw it at them.
yeah, and then like use fudging the rolls as the emergency red button.
Right, yeah. Whenever it comes to homebrew creatures like that, there's always testing that has to be done to make sure that
Yes.
it's that it is challenging, but not, super deadly to the point where you have them dying with like TPK within a round.
Yeah.
It's it is a process with using so many things.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of like the some of like the especially for games and stuff like that, the biggest things, just like because we have creative ideas and we want to use them. Which is like, okay, this is cool. I want to just put this in here, but it's patience. You'll get there. Don't worry, you'll get there. But have patience.
Yeah. You want to do that when you're comfortable with the training wheels off.
Yeah.
And everyone knows when you feel comfortable. Like comfort is one of those things that in my personal life and in my professional life, like when you're comfortable in doing something. When you're like hesitating. And like that is when you want to try to be careful and then know when it's time to like break out. Everyone knows like, okay, I'm getting too comfortable. I need to try something new. But then like when it's like, okay, I'm not comfortable using spellcasters as a creature, right? You're like, I'm not much of a spellcaster in my PCs. I don't know how to use that as a DM. But it sounds like a cool idea,
Yeah, and I think like that's as well as knowing your party, also know your limitations, know your comfort zone. Um, like you said, if spellcasters are confusing and it's hard for you to like manage them, then don't make monsters that have like intense spell lists and stuff like that. Just it's sort of just knowing what you can handle and what is in your wheelhouse, essentially.
yeah. Also, like this is something like I'm not trying to come across as arrogant. I apologize, like if anyone thinks that.
Ready for combat.
Let me let them know.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, this soldier.
So villains. Villains are creatures.
Yep.
And so I find myself really good at villains.
For reference, I will back this up. He's way too good at villains, and it's terrifying.
And thank you. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is not everything's combat. Not everything has, hey, go fight this. Like sometimes making people scared of a person who runs the town for whatever reason makes it to where the players don't engage them.
Yeah, no, that's fair because that person is absolutely terrifying, and without even fighting us, just his demeanor, the ability or like the fact that everyone around him is either scared of him, even people who seem really powerful are scared of this guy, yet we've seen him do nothing. Becomes like you get scared of that. You don't want to fight that because that feels like just like one shot. I look at you and you die moments. Which
Yeah.
is good. Like every monster and every bad guy you make doesn't have to be fought. There are a lot of other ways with dealing with that. There are a lot of other ways of dealing with baddies besides just fighting them.
Yeah. Another piece too is when people will say like, well, no prep last encounter with the players. True. But
True.
here's the thing. Like say you had a planned for gnolls to attack your players if they went through this valley, right? And the players went, instead of going through the valley, went through the mountains. Here's a good question. What is stopping you from going, grab those gnolls, shift them over the 10 miles, and set them down in front of the players?
Right. Because
Nothing.
if the nobles are planning to ambush them as they come through this valley, then they're going to be keeping tabs on them anyway.
Yeah, and it doesn't. The players don't know that. They don't
Right.
know that. Like, oh, they were going to fight gnolls in the valley, but the DM pulled them over like going up the mountain instead. Like,
Right. Yeah. It's not something that like you're like you can tell them if you'd like. I would advise telling them after this after the fight, not beforehand. so they don't feel like slighted. But I mean, it's not something that like it's similar to, I think, in the mindset of people who do movie shows, or not movie shows, plays and things like that. Is that if you make a mistake, just go with it. Go with it, because the people who are outside or watching the play or something like that, they don't know you made a mistake. Just roll with what you have, and if the party does something that seems to be like coming from left field, there's always a way to shift your plans to make them still work.
Yeah. I mean, it's also kind of like when we were talking about like what a monster would do. Say that the monster's winning. You didn't plan on the monster kicking their ass as much as it did, but they're like two players are down out of the 5, and the monster, say it's an intelligent creature and was like, okay, I'm winning. He could kill them. He could kill one, right? But maybe he has something he or she needs to go do, or they has something they want to go do, and sitting here fighting a bunch of people who have no idea why they're here. Are they gonna stand there and just like murder all of them? They could, but like maybe they have something else they need to go do. Maybe the creature is just like over it. Like even if it's not intelligent, like not every creature is like, I'm just gonna like murder everything.
Right.
Sometimes they're just like, leave me alone.
Yeah, it's sort of like to the point of they're fighting just to stay alive, because the party is try attacking them, and they're like, I don't know what's going on or why these people are doing this. These creatures are attacking me. So it comes to the point of, what are the creature's intentions then too? Is this creature someone that is going to actually and utterly murder them because that's what its nature is to do? Like, if a wolf is hunting the party, if like a pack of wolves is hunting the party, they're most likely going to try to kill the party. If they ambush like a creature in its own lair and it's confused and doesn't know what's going on, it's most likely just going to be fighting to survive.
Yeah,
Or
or
if they just happen across a creature and it's like, and they just decide to fight it, it's most likely just going to be fighting to survive.
yeah, or a devil. Like my personal favorite creatures. What if the party is losing and the devil sees that their lives are important to them? You think the devil might be like, hey, I can tell that you guys are not ready to go. I can tell that, I'm winning this fight, and mercy is something that has a cost. One of your people are down. I need something done. Tell you what, I'll let you live.
If you do this for me.
Yeah, and say like, and people are like, oh, well, that's that's pretty mean though, and it's like, you're right, it is. That's what the monster would do.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's one of those things. I think one of the core aspects is like, what would the creature do?
And I know that sometimes it feels bad. Sometimes when you're playing the
It does.
It's making the party make difficult decisions, and it might be wrecking them in a way that you didn't exactly want. And you have those choices in front of you. But then, I mean, D&D for me is I don't know what it's different for everybody, but for me it's a storytelling experience. It's a way of telling a really cool and really amazing story. And what better part is there to a story? What more gripping of a part to a story is there than watching the main characters struggle to do something? And, you want to see how they're going to overcome that. How are they going to get over this monster that they're fighting, this situation they've gotten themselves into? And you're the one making those monsters. You're the one making that difficult situation. And you're the one that you has like the choice in essence to make the story either really, really cool or just okay.
Like, meh, we fought it when we won,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it depends how you look at it. So like, if you look at it as you're antagonizing your players and being mean to them, obviously there's a problem. Yeah. But like, if you're looking at it as like I look at it as, I want to see Josh shine. I want to see his character, who he put so much work into, really like be awesome and like struggle with this morals of what's going on here or the challenge ahead. I think that's fun, and I think that's like
Yeah.
boosting your friends up. Um,
It allows for them to. It makes them think, and it makes them overcome this challenge that you put in front of them, which is really really good, and it makes for a really really cool story.
yeah, I use D&D at my job to do this sort of thing with peer support groups, and like, there's some folks who have different challenges in their lives, and when they come into our group, a lot of people have assumptions, right? Of like, oh well, like they're not able to do X, Y, and Z, or like they don't normally talk, or whatever it is. You can bring somebody out of their shell in a fun way that you never thought possible if you give them a chance to be them and not assume that any challenge is going to upset them or that they're not able to conquer it, I guess is the way to put it. Obviously know people's limitations, ask your players what they think and what they find fun, very important. Be 100% about what you find fun and what you don't. But I think at the end of the day, to bullet point all of this, use the guides available to you. So the books, advice from your friends. Um, play the monsters as best you can as they are, like as what they would be in the world. And also remember that the point of this isn't to kill your players as you. It is to
Yes.
challenge and drop them into a world with these creatures to make them feel like you're fighting a wolf, fighting a devil, fighting a giant, and help them experience the moment as the characters, whether that's death, whether that's defeat, or whether it's glory and success. It's all the same experience.
Yeah, it's a balance. It definitely is, and it's something that you're not gonna learn right away. It's something that you're going to make mistakes in, and you're gonna have creatures that end up too powerful or creatures that end up too weak, and that's okay. It's all about learning, because the more you do it, the more times you fail, succeed, whichever in between, the more you're going to learn. The more you're going to be able to tweak and make your monsters better.
Yeah, and as Josh was saying, even if you don't like the advice or don't like the reaction that you got, that's still a fountain of uh, information that you can drink from. That's
Right.
like even if your player's like, I didn't like that, or like that was stupid. Like sure, that's gonna hurt your feelings, you
Right.
know, but or like that was too hard, or like I didn't know what to do. Like those are all feedbacks that you can go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I should probably like
Okay.
clue that in a little better,
Right.
or like
Mm-hmm.
you can ask them questions. Hey, how would like without like
Right.
giving you the direct answer? What are some ways that I can like convey that this creature was too dangerous to engage?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or like,
things like
why
that.
did it feel too hard for you? Or what would you like for me in the future to better, convey the situation, or how difficult this encounter is going, or the things that may happen.
Yeah, and like for me, I feel like a lot of those tropes and like standards that people have put out of the DM doesn't make mistakes and the DM is God, and
Oh yeah.
the rules are just guidelines. Don't use them, and no, don't prep because you're it's gonna not gonna don't prep because
Totally.
you're not gonna use it anyway. Are all really bad advice in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I feel
I
like there
mean,
are gray areas there.
yes, there are very much gray areas. And in those situations, like, you are the DM. Yes, you are the one at the table making like the roll and everything. You're the one narrating. So in a sense, like, you have the final say in things in some senses, but don't don't abuse that power. Don't be like, just because if someone's trying to give you actual, like, I don't like this, or I'm not comfortable with this, or
I don't like you
maybe
change
this
that rule.
right, or like this I felt like this encounter was too hard and I couldn't I it didn't feel like we had a chance to win, something like that. Don't just be like, well, I'm the DM, and what I say goes.
Yeah,
Communication is key.
because honestly, if that was like how it was all the time, I'd quit.
Yeah,
Because
it's
everyone were like, well, rules lawyers, and I'm like, there's a difference between a rules lawyer and somebody going, hey, I don't like that you changed my class ability midway through a fight,
right.
and then now I
Yeah,
have no reason to use this anymore. You know,
exactly.
because that's
Yeah,
not fun. Like, obviously, there's going to be like changes in like how you see something, and you don't have to have a fight in the middle of the game, but like
yeah.
to like, hey, you changed how hold person works because you don't like it, which is something that happened to me. I held person on the person's boss, and they were like, "That's bullshit. He can't do anything." And I'm like, "Well, that's what hold person does."
that's that's the point of the spell.
Yeah, I held person. I held on to. I held him there. He didn't make a save at the end of the turn, and I went up to him and I hit him with a great sword. I was
Yep.
a cleric, and he was mad because he was like, "Well, you're supposed to be healing. You're a cleric," and I'm like, "No, that's not. I'm a war cleric. Like,
It's like, hey, look.
we should have been a paladin." And it's
Yeah.
like, I didn't want to be a paladin. I wanted
I
to
want to
be a
be a paladin. I
cleric.
want to be a cleric.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
it's
like it's not fun to experience that of like somebody telling you I'm the DM, I'm changing how your spell works. Suck it up. You know,
yeah.
that's not fun, you know.
And I understand the feeling as a DM of watching a player or play your party rip through your encounter, and it doesn't always feel good because you're like, I wanted this to be epic and I wanted this to be hard, and then they figure out a way around it, and it doesn't always feel good. But then there's in that moment, there's also the moment of you have to realize you wanted to make this challenging, and you wanted to challenge the party, but the party found a creative way to get around your challenge, which in essence did what you wanted to do.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I've had it happen to me like as a DM, and they thought I was mad because I went silent for like 5 or 6 seconds. Basically, I had this. I spent 2 weeks preparing this. It was like a dryad sort of like plant woman, like as a boss.
Mm.
It was so epic. Had mind control abilities, had like legendary actions and layer actions, and the player used plane shift on her. She had she had magical resistance, right? So she got to roll twice, take the higher. I rolled a 3 and a 4, not
Yo.
making the save. So she got to die a slow death in the elemental plane of water. Um, and they conquered it in a single round. I wasn't mad. I was proud because
Yeah.
they, it's one of those things. Is again, why are you doing this? It's
Right.
are you there to help your friends have an adventure and to shine and to bring about a social experiment of bonding through strife and pain and simulate all these things are simulated.
Simulated.
Think of
Yeah.
all the stories that we have fighting these crazy ass creatures that either kill us or challenge us or we mow right through them. It's the best experience. That's why I love D&D. And like so,
Yeah.
and like your character just died in a campaign and
One shot.
permanently one shot with
Yeah.
a vorpal sword, and I am loving it because Lehan, my character, is so sad, but he has to be the strong one and push through because everyone else has fallen apart. He
Yeah.
wants
I mean, like
vengeance.
as a player, when that happens to your character, you're like, oh, oh, jeez. Okay. All right. Thankfully, I had a backup character like already ready to go. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, it felt bad when I was like, he can't be revived. He's not coming back. Because you're like, I really want to keep playing this character that I've invested so much into. But at the same time, his death is going to make a really, really cool impact on the story.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's really cool. Like, I know a lot of times players get attached to their characters and they feel really angry or upset when the DM has the quote unquote gall to kill their character. But if you think about it, if you think about books and stories and all that sort of stuff, some of the best moments come out from watching or having a character die.
Yeah.
It's It's a growing experience. It's something that happens all the time. It's something that players and characters in a simulated life are gonna have to deal with, and
Yeah.
especially in the adventuring life. I mean, the adventuring life, your chances of surviving are they're not real good, man.
You get paid a lot because there's a big ass risk. And like, it's kind
Yep.
of I think about all the shows you guys all like. So like I love Supernatural, but there's no threat of death. You know,
Yep.
because you know they're either just gonna come back or like whatever. And sure, there are resurrection spells and stuff like that. But there are
Yeah.
another thing on creatures. Everyone says it's so hard to die in fifth edition. Bullshit. Because you know how many undead there are and fiends
That
there are that when you go to zero
that
hit
we.
points you turn into an undead and makes most of those resurrection
Yeah.
things moot. And people are like, well, I don't want to
Yep.
use that because it's gonna kill them. And it's like, well, then that's your choice
Well,
to
that's
not.
the point. Yeah.
Yeah, then that's your choice to not have
Like
that
if
possibility.
right, if you are if you have the feeling of it's not too hard for your party to die, then yeah, I mean there are a lot of ways to get around that. But if you don't want to use them, it's sort of up to figure out to you. Well, then what's wrong with, or why are you complaining about it being so hard to kill them? If you're afraid to use the ways of killing them, which I mean, don't be trying to kill your party. In essence, I mean, if the villain has a plan for them that is most likely going to kill them, cool, that's fine. That's the villain's idea. That's something that they're doing, which is it's probably going to be to try to kill the party. But don't be, as the DM, planning ways to kill them just because you can, or just because you want to see someone in the party die. Don't do that.
Hmm.
Don't do that.
Yeah. So like, I probably gotta go soon, but like in closing
Oh yeah.
statements, you know, as like longtime DMs and like experienced DMs, like it's not, we say these things not out of like, oh yeah, we know so much. It's just I have fucked up so many times, like doing these things that I'm telling you, like oh these are some barriers, these are some things that help, these are some things that I find helpful, or like things that I do. It's because I didn't do them at some point, and like someone told me like,
Found out
hey,
part.
that's not really working, man, or like, why'd you do that? You know, like,
Yep.
and it's these are for me 15 years worth of like mess ups and bouncing
Yeah.
back and going, oh man, I should have done that, or I could have done that better, or like, you know, learning to pacing with those
Hmm.
creatures of like how to use these creatures in a proper way,
Yep.
because I at one point didn't know these things, and it was because I'm new. You know,
Right.
it's a journey. It's 100% a journey, just like the players get to experience. As a DM, you get to
Oh,
experience personal growth on how to design
yeah.
these things.
Yeah. And just like I said, like you said, we don't come to you guys as people who know everything. We come to you guys as people who have done a lot of things and messed up a lot of things, and are telling you ways that we learn to get around messing up.
Yeah, I had the mindset too of like I don't want to kill my players for a long time, and then I realized that they weren't afraid to die, and so they just did
Right.
crazy things, and like they're like, it's kind of boring. You know, like I'm
Yeah,
not
I can get away
afraid.
with anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
like it's all about the heart. What you want to do
Yeah.
with your game. What's the heart of it?
Yeah.
And for me, it's
It's
all wanting to see my friends shine.
Yep, it's just figuring out, the best way to tell your story, the best way to make these creatures that are going to challenge your players and make your story even better than it was before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I'm not sure as far as the scheduling thing goes because I'm gonna aim for like every other Saturday. Is what I planned.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And then we'll try to like do like a thing where like uh, if you guys have questions, we'll try to do a video on it, or like if we come up with a new idea, we'll kind of like put it out there, and like if people have questions like in chat and stuff, or like even just like want to interact, I'm more than happy to like answer questions or like come up with like new directions and what we'll talk about.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well,
Oh man.
it's been really
Thank you
fun.
guys so much if you were listening to our ramblings and ravings, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys got something out of it. And
Yeah,
oh
we'll see you
man,
next time.
next time, yeah. See you guys later.
See ya.